Welcome back to Roam Your Roots. In this video, I am going to map my third great-grandfather's Civil War experience. He was Lieutenant Colonel of the 37th Iowa Infantry, also known as the Graybeards. I am eager to put all the places that he was during the Civil War on this map. My third great-grandfather, who I'm just going to start calling George from now on, George enlisted at Dubuque in 1862, so that is the first place that we are going to put on this map. I'm making this map with the idea of taking a road trip, so I'm also going to show you, which I haven't done in any of my previous videos so far, how to use Google My Maps to build a road trip. It'll give you driving directions. So I'm excited to utilize that feature in this video, which I haven't utilized in any of my other videos so far. So let's start with Dubuque. Here is Dubuque, and I'm going to add that to my map. So there is stop number 1. So he enlisted at Dubuque in 1862. And by October of 1862, the regiment was ordered into quarters at Camp Strong, and that was in Muscatine. We're going to add that to the map. That is stop number 2. So just on some very quick research that I did, it doesn't look like Camp Strong is still there. There's some markers around Muscatine marking the history of Camp Strong, which was the muster point for a few Iowa regiments, but it doesn't look like anything related to the camp is still there. But anyway, Muscatine is the second stop on this road trip that I would potentially do, and it's just south of Dubuque. So what I'm going to do now is put in directions from Dubuque to Muscatine, and what that will do will show me the route to take, but it'll also label Dubuque as point A and Muscatine as point B, and as we continue mapping out this route that George took, everything will be labeled A, B, C, D, E, etc., etc. So it'll show you where to start and where to end and sort of the route that he took. So to do that, you'll click on the second point that you'd like directions to, and you will click on this little sort of Y-shaped arrow here, and that will give you directions to Muscatine. And you'll see over here another layer popped up, and it's asking from where you want the directions to Muscatine. So I am going to put in Dubuque, and see, there are 2 Dubukes here. This is just the city, but this it recognizes as my pinpoint. So I'm going to do that because that will label Dubuque as pinpoint A. So now you'll see that we have a route A to B. And of course, like, I don't expect that this is the exact route that George took. Of course, that's not how he got to Muscatine from Dubuque. But more importantly, what I'm looking for are these A and B points and this sort of general route. So the 37th Iowa Infantry arrived at Camp Strong in Muscatine on October 10th, 1862. By December 26th, 1862, they had left for St. Louis. Now, curiously, in the muster rolls for George, he was marked absent through December. So I'm not sure that means he somehow got to St. Louis by himself if he wasn't with his regiment. I really don't know what that means. I wrote a blog post on mapping out your ancestors' Civil War journey based on their muster rolls, because remember, you can look at a regimental history of any regiment and it'll say they were here, 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 and here. But for all you know, your ancestor could have deserted. Your ancestor could have been absent for months because he was hit during shelling. Your ancestor's history will be different, or may be different, than the regimental history. Maybe your ancestor was shot and he went to a hospital somewhere in a nearby town and was there for a few months. You never know. So don't rely totally on the regimental histories to map out your ancestors' Civil War experience. Rely on the muster rolls, the pension files, that's what I'm going off of, as well as a book written of the history of the 37th Infantry, which mentions George a lot, not in very positive light. Apparently no one really liked him much. But anyway, in George's case, he was absent for a few months here and there, just on leave, but more or less he was with the regiment. So although he was marked absent during the time that the regiment went to St. Louis, he eventually did get to St. Louis, so I'm not sure about the specifics of his timeline there, but I'm going to put St. Louis on this map anyway, because at the end of the day, it was the third place that he went in this Civil War journey. So we are going to mark St. Louis down, So I've added St. Louis to the map. So now if we zoom out, we're starting to see the basic movements that George went through on his Civil War journey. Started in Dubuque, went to Camp Strong, then went south to St. Louis. And of course there are specific places in each of these cities that I'll want to visit. For example, in Muscatine, I'll want to visit the Camp Strong markers and anything else relevant to what the unit was doing in Muscatine. In St. Louis specifically, what I've learned by reading through George's muster rolls, as well as the history of the 37th Iowa Infantry in the Graybeard book that I have, the regiment was stationed specifically at Benton Barracks and then Schofield Barracks. So I'm not going to put Benton Barracks or Schofield Barracks on this map, but what I am going to do is click open this pin that I just made and edit it and add those 2 points here. So when I refer back to this map that I've made, when I do go on that road trip, I know where exactly to visit in St. Louis. So I'm just going to save that. Now I know when I get to St. Louis, those are the 2 places that I want to visit specifically. The next movement of the regiment came at the end of July in 1863 when they were ordered to move on to Alton, Illinois. So that will be point D on this little road trip that I'm going to do. Let's add Alton, Illinois. Oh, there's only one L. Alton, Illinois. Add to map, and let's zoom out a little bit to see where the map is taking us. Not too far, just north of St. Louis. This is really getting filled out a little bit. I am excited. It's so cool to place all these places on a map and actually physically see the route that he would have taken. I think that is amazing. So they were living in Alton, Illinois till January 1864, where they moved on to Rock Island. Now, for those of you who don't know, Rock Island was a prison camp, a Union prison camp. It held Confederate prisoners of war as well as just some other bad people. Okay, there's Rock Island, Illinois, and actually what I think is, it's not the town of Rock Island, it's this Rock Island Arsenal. This is where they were stationed. So I am going to put that on a map. Let's just put, let's see, Rock Island Arsenal Visitor Control Center. Let's just put the museum, maybe? Or can I click on this? No, I can't. Let's click on the museum and add that to the map. Okay, so Rock Island Arsenal Museum has been added to the map. This is where the Graybeards were stationed. I'm just going to add this in the directions. So this is going to be point E. There's our pin. So we're filling it out a little bit more. Ooh, this is exciting. Oh wow, so they really came all the way back up. For some reason I thought Rock Island was near Alton, but I was very wrong. It's all the way up there. So that's another good thing about mapping these out. You get a little geography lesson. So the regiment departed Rock Island in June 1864 and headed to Memphis. I know where Memphis is. That's very far. Let's add that to the map. And we're going to add Memphis as point F down here. There's our pin. Add it as point F. Let's see what the little trail looks like now. Going all the way down south. Wow, that's really far. What this reminds me of is if you have those running apps on your phone where you go on a run and then it traces your path. That's what this is looking like. Just putting it in that perspective actually makes it really interesting. So down here in Memphis, the Graybeards were stationed at a camp 3 miles east of the city. Now, of course, I would need to do some research into Memphis Civil War history to see what camp that was. For now, I'm just going to write the camp 3 miles east of the city, so let me edit this. So there I've written camp 3 miles east of the city. That's to remind me that when I do get to Memphis on this little Civil War history trip, I'm looking for a camp 3 miles east of the city where they were. Now, another place that I know they were in Memphis was Mud Island. So I know that Mud Island was actually a place significant in the 37th Iowa Infantry's time in Memphis, not from the history that I read and not from the Civil War file that I read, but actually from George's testimony in his pension file. He went deaf in Memphis. He gave testimony. There are a bunch of affidavits from his friends who either served with him or friends that he talked to after the war that also said he went deaf in Memphis. It was at the mouth of the Wolf River. And of course, the Wolf River is this small little river here, and the mouth, of course, is where it meets the Mississippi River. And so that means that it was on Mud Island that he experienced the sounds of the shelling that made him deaf. And what I really am kicking myself over is the fact that I was only in Memphis a few months ago, just on a weekend trip, and I went to Mud Island, and I spent like 2 hours walking around Mud Island. And if I had known that that was such a significant place in my ancestors' history, I would have taken a lot more photos, bet you. So the Graybeards only spent a few months in Memphis. Unfortunately, those few months were enough to make my ancestor, good old George, go deaf. But then they were ordered to go to Indianapolis. So I'm going to add Indianapolis as point G to this map. Let's zoom out here to get a good idea of the geography because I'm curious. Oh, they're going all the way over there. Okay. So they were stationed in Indianapolis, and from there they were ordered to break up. So George took charge of 5 companies, and they were ordered to stay in Indianapolis and stand guard at Camp Morton. And actually, George and his 5 companies were only at Camp Morton for about a month before they were ordered to move on to Columbus, Ohio, and stand guard at Camp Chase. So there is point H on this map. We're getting kind of far down into the alphabet. So let's add Columbus, Ohio here. Add to map. There, they're going a little bit further east. Let's zoom out again and see what that looks like. Whew, okay. That's a lot of movements. So then in April 1865, George and his companies were ordered to go to Cincinnati from Columbus, and they were put in charge of Little Barracks, or Little Barracks. So let's add Cincinnati to the map. So now we have approached the end of the Civil War experience of this 37th Iowa Infantry and of my dear third great-grandfather, George West. So after Cincinnati, they were only there for about a month when they were ordered to report to Davenport, and that was when they were mustered out of service. So the very last point in this map that I will make is Davenport, Iowa, pretty close to where they started. So let's add Davenport to the map, and it's going to be point J. And there we have arrived back in Davenport. Now let's zoom out and see what this road trip is going to look like for me. Oh my goodness. These are all the movements that George made in his service in the Civil War. Please, 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 if you have Civil War ancestors, try to do this yourself. It will open your eyes so much to the geography, the paths that they took, and just the extent to which they served. Thanks for watching. I hope this was helpful, and I hope this inspires you to map out your ancestors' own Civil War journey. Thanks for watching this video. Be sure to subscribe to the Roam Your Roots YouTube channel and turn on notifications to be updated every time I upload a new video. I post tutorials and travel vlogs because Roam Your Roots is all about genealogy tourism. If you have an Instagram, be sure to follow us at Roam Your Roots to stay updated with all the things we're doing, and join us on Facebook as well, facebook.com/roamyourroots.